Welcome to another episode of A Podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted, and today we have Evan Taylor, athlete, entrepreneur, and much more. You're a super high-valued community member. I see you posting all the time about both work, and you're always going above and beyond, Evan. So it's great to have you on the show today. Share a little bit more about your story. I know when we were talking last week, it turned out that we had some odd coincidences of, for me, a very short-lived hockey career. But you were from the town that played a very little bit of junior hockey and stuff like that. And so there's some very odd, but I will call it Manitoba, easy connections to be made within our storylines that we were, oblivious to prior to chatting a little bit more. So excited to chat more, get to know you more on the episode today and share your story. So thanks for making time to be on today. And I'll pass it over to you and get you to share with the listener here a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. Evan Taylor, obviously born and raised from Neepawa, Manitoba boy. And that's where our little small connection has come into play here. Ex-junior hockey player, that was one of my biggest passions growing up. Happy to hear that you were a part of that journey too and lived that same shared experience in the hockey world. It's one of the most beautiful sports out there. And grew up, always an athlete, lived that incredible lifestyle, and had a really, really, really nice upbringing with my mom and dad and two sisters that supported me all the way through, the grind of making it to junior hockey. I'm sure you have felt that through your experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. There was, no easy route, just I think more timing than anything. I think it was like a tournament. And I know we shared chatting about Jeff McDonald for a minute there, but he had seen me at like some tournament we had rurally. And I really thrived in a rougher environment of sports. So we played some country games, and I remember, I forget even where maybe we were in Brandon or something. And just kind of contacted after that and had a very light stint there. But great athletes, great program that was up there at the time. And then chose the university path because I didn't see myself really making it super far in that journey there. But it was a good one to have for the storyline. So
yeah. I mean, junior hockey was never it was a goal. Obviously, I wanted to make it there. I wanted to obtain that goal, but I think the ego played more into the reasons why I wanted to make it into junior hockey rather than actually, being good enough to make it anywhere else after that. I think one of the biggest things for me was, and this has been the case in my entire life, is that I never really had a plan throughout my entire life. I was always kind of fly by the seat of my pants. Let's go play AAA. And if AAA works out, then maybe I'll make it into junior hockey. And then from there, after junior hockey, it's like, if hockey can be a career, then let's go that way. But I was never good enough to, like, if you look at my hockey DB, awful. I'm like fourth line, played 55 games. I think I had like 6 goals and 3 assists. I was a grinder. My entire life I played defense, and I made the Neepawa natives as a center. So
okay, we switched it up.
Switched it up. So I mean, and then that that trajectory and that inability to know what I was going to do next kind of played a role into the other side of my story, which is I struggled I can't pinpoint when I knew I had a problem with drugs and alcohol, but my big thing and part of my story and who I am now is that I've gone through addiction and that I've got out the other side of it. And I started drinking when I was 14, right. Small town living. Everybody attributes it to the boredom of living in a small town, and it's just what you do. But the reality is that I drank differently than anybody else And there was always that level of addiction that stuck in my story as I progressed through having all these successes. And that's the thing that's one point that I think is really important to get across to a lot of people, is that you can have all the success in the world. You can make and achieve goals every single day of your life, but you can still struggle behind closed doors and struggle with these addictions and struggle with your mental health throughout achieving these goals. So for me, it was, it started when I was 14 years old, and it wasn't a problem. Obviously, it was just like what you did. And then, like anything, when you start to become reliant, or when you start to just not have a path to success in your life, the negative always creeps in, and my progression into drugs and alcohol was the better part of a decade. It really dove deep from 20 until I was 30. 32 I think is when I quit, 31, 32. But yeah, it's a tough one, because when you sit there and you think about your past and you think about all the things that you wanted to achieve, and you see all these other people going out and doing school, going to university, getting good jobs, doing the career things, it was tough for me, because I wanted to be those people, but my only care and focus, and I tell people all the time, I'd say one of the best things that I ever was an alcoholic. I was so good at it. Like, people were good at studying and going to school. I was good at drinking and partying.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, open up. I knew we were going to talk about that on the episode today, but that's very strong of you to be able to talk about it so smoothly and eloquently, even though it's a very tough thing to get through, right? There's obviously like a major focus, and like so something that you mentioned there, the two, but when did you realize that it was, or if you look back on it, you're kind of like, okay, here's where it kind of was a problem. I mean, like I worked in agriculture for a long time, and it was a common part of the industry, and a lot of that was attached to being rural, remote, not a lot going on. Literally was a statement all the time. Sit around hopefully it wasn't at coffee time, but once in a while it was like, hey, do you want this for your coffee? In meetings with farms. And it's like, no. Maybe in the afternoon in some cases of, my past travels in that industry, but it's very evident that is kind of a normal thing in rural communities a lot of the time. And it's not to, make excuses or make light of it, but it does seem to be like an easier gateway open, to the drinking thing, or access to that. So I think that totally makes sense given, where you were, how that got started. So.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I started to pinpoint that I was having a problem, or the reality was sinking in, is I had failed relationships. I didn't attribute those to drugs or alcohol, but it played a major factor into the decision making, to your level of mental health throughout dealing with a relationship. We all know that relationships are hard on their own, but when every single weekend you were going and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you don't grow. You don't get to know your partner. You don't get to understand who you are. And my development, like in your early years of development, in your 20s, when you're starting to find out who you are as a person, when you're masking all those feelings and emotions with drugs and alcohol, because for me, I just didn't want to feel. Maybe it was past traumas. As a kid, I was bullied in hockey. I never really fit in. I was never really one of those hockey bros that like lived the lifestyle. So again, didn't really fit the mold, but loved the game. And then high school, again, things just like didn't progress for me. I was popular, but not like the popular kids. I didn't date much. I didn't really, fit in that sense either. And then after high school, when I started to get into my first relationships and I started to meet people, that's when the progression started to happen. And I would surround myself with people that would facilitate a weekend warrior. Is what the terms I like to call, is like where you can go out and those people are doing the exact same thing. So to me, I look fine because the rest of them are doing that. So when I started to realize that I was having problems, was when I would lose a job or I wasn't able to function at like a regular job. I would lose a relationship. There was a really big downward spiral when I got a DUI. So red flags, we talk about in addiction, we talk about the red flags that come up throughout your journey into sobriety. And those were my red flags. I would lose friendships. I don't think people trusted who I was as a person. I didn't think I had much value behind who I was or my word. So it was probably 25 when I got my DUI. I finally admitted to my parents that I had gotten a DUI and that I was going to make some changes. And so I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is available to anybody. And I want everybody to know that that is out there, and that if you are really struggling, that is a place that is available to you. And you can walk through those doors no matter what, without judgment. And it helps. It helps millions and billions of people every year. So I walked through those doors very, very young. I definitely wasn't ready to relinquish my ego, which was a big part in why I relapsed the first time. But it was a very eye-opening experience for me. I remember you go around in a circle and the first words out of your mouth are, my name's Evan and I'm an alcoholic. And when that came over to me for the first time, I broke down, I cried, and I had this old timer sitting beside me, and he just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "It's okay. It's fine." Yeah. So that was the start of things. And I thought I was going to be okay. I thought, okay, I got into sobriety. I got into AA. I got a handle on things. I think I got sober for maybe 6 months or 4 months or something like that, where I really didn't drink at all, didn't touch any drugs, nothing. And then you just kind of get caught up in things again. I stopped going to things, and stopped, doing the things that were keeping me sober, and inevitably relapsed. And it wasn't like a crazy, ugly relapse where you everything falls out of place for me. I was able to work. I was able to function. My alcoholism stemmed on weekends only. I didn't really bring it into my daily work environment. I was able to stay sober for the days, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was my time.
Right. You know what I was going to ask in terms of that? I had a unique experience in university working at, I guess they've now kind of changed names, but the MLCC. Mm-hmm. And depending on, I used to just be an absolute fiend for hours there. And, but you got to see a lot of people stop in, and I guess it's a different version of an addictive tendency, but the same folks you'd see at one store at one time of the day, if you worked at a different store, you'd actually see them at they were just, they'd you're like, what are you doing here? They'd recognize me and, be fully functioning, but they'd be picking up in this case, a smaller bottle to kind of pass along their day. And I understood that part of their psychology, as they'd never commit to a larger bottle of something, but they were okay with saying, "Oh, I just had a little bit," kind of mentality or whatever. And I was just like, I learned that over time because it was kind of weirded me out. I was like, I don't know, I'm like 19 years old. I was like 18 when I first started there. I was very young, like for getting into that and learning about wines and alcohol and stuff like that. But you got to see the other side of that as well, which is, there's high functioning individuals, and there was a lot of people well known in different parts of the city, of every, whatever you want to call it, level tier of jobs, and some are really important people. And as far as we would rank in society, that were coming in to get a handful, I don't know what they're called, like the minis though, whatever, the little ones, and then the ponies or Mickeys and stuff. And you're just kind of like, I guess that's how they're managing stress in their day. But it's definitely a lifestyle at that point, right? And it's kind of like, when is that ship going to crash? Kind of thing. Obviously, you had that, opportunity situation that evolved for you with, getting a DUI and then starting to turn things there. But just sharing that experience, because I've seen other parts of it. But then you're right. Then there was like weekend warriors and some things that I think people probably would overlook, right? They'd be like, oh, he's fine, he's young, he's having fun. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, like the party just never really stopped, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, the lead up for me, and like I was living in Brandon at that time, and I was living with a good friend of mine, and he's an amazing guy. He's an incredibly successful entrepreneur, real estate agent, like a guy that had his shit together, like hands down, unbelievable. So like at that time, we were starting to transition in life, like we were getting older. I had started into my career, which I didn't know was going to be my career, but was going to be my career. So I worked for Moore's Clothing for Men suit store in Brandon, Manitoba, which was just like a job at the time for me. But I had done very well. And it's kind of funny because when you think about sales, you think a lot about what comes into sales, which is a lot of schmoozing, a lot of people person, a lot of talking, and inevitably a lot of socializing. So again, I played into roles that worked well for me, but also for the social aspect of life, which allowed me to continue to drink more, right? So anyways, I started into this career, and Nigel and I both decided that we wanted to like get out of Brandon. I was gonna move it into Winnipeg. I had a promotion on the table from Moore's to take me to the big store on Ness Avenue here in Winnipeg, which was awesome. But again, I got into that store, and like the people there, all of us, we did every weekend at work, sometimes like after hours, like just parties and drinking. Like it was just like I went from one to another. The unfortunate thing is that I moved in with my sister, my oldest sister, Sarah. And for, I think, the better part of 8 months, she just got to witness like a complete debacle of what my life was becoming. Again, fully functioning at work. And I did so well at the Ness Avenue location that I got a promotion to move to Regina to become to a managerial role, which I didn't deserve at all because it was a gong show. I was a mess. But I decided to take that because what my sister was starting to see was the progression of my alcoholism and my addiction. And there were times that I would walk through the door, fall through the door and into her living room, and she would come and pick me up and put me into bed and pat me on the head and, tell me everything's going to be okay. And at one point, there was one night where she drove me to like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, which I don't think I ever went into. I don't remember. I was a mess, but it was that level of progression with my alcoholism and drug use that I had to run away from. And that's why when the job opportunity to move to Regina came up, I took it right away, saying to my sister and my mom that, this is going to be an amazing change for me. Right. To be able to do what addicts call a geographical, which is you move provinces or you move locations, your problems stay, but you leave them, but inevitably your problems always follow you wherever you go. So I made the transition to living in Regina, working in Regina. At the time, I still was dealing with my DUI. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a car. So it was very, very tough. And when I moved out there, it was a happy change. It lasted quite some time where I was doing well, like managing my drinking, because I didn't know anybody. Right. And so I felt confident that I was going to be okay. I felt confident that life was going to take a turn for me and that things were going to progress and that I was going to be able to beat whatever I was dealing with. At that time, I couldn't admit that I was, an addict and struggling, but I dove into work. I started to meet people, jumped into a relationship like right away because I was, you're lonely and you don't know what you're doing and didn't know anybody out there. And so that was what kept me kind of level-headed until, of course, within that relationship, I started to falter. And I can see now that in there during that relationship, more red flags were starting to come up. I was hiding alcohol around the house anytime that we could be, and I think you have some experience with this, but anytime that we would be going out, I would, have drinks prior to going out, but hide the empties or throw the empties away. And then we would go out and then continue on. And so there was definitely more red flags coming up. And this girl, before we got into the relationship, had made a point of saying to me, like, I don't want to date anybody that's an alcoholic. So if that's you, then I don't want to date you. And of course I lied to her and didn't tell her what, my life was actually like. And, we were happy for a little bit, but inevitably in the end, she started to find everything that I was doing, finding things that I was hiding around the house. The relationship, I know for a fact that I was not a good person during that relationship. I was not the man that I want to be when I meet somebody. And that inevitably came to an end. And that's when that happened and I moved out and I got on my own. That's when everything started to truly spiral out of control for me. I think I was probably 29 at this time. And my drinking, my drinking would progress from there. So it would turn into, I would have drinks in the morning to stay calm. And then I would have drinks at work to feel confident that I was capable of doing my job. And then the crazy part about alcoholism is that you're telling yourself you don't want to do this all day long. I don't want to drink. Mentally, you're exhausted. Mentally, you're constantly having this battle in your brain of your next drink. So what I noticed is at the end of every day when I was driving home, I would start my car and I would have that conversation with me. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. And inevitably, no matter what, I would end up in the parking lot of a liquor mart somewhere. And like you said, you knew people that would jump around from liquor marts to liquor marts. I would jump around from liquor mart to liquor mart so that I wouldn't feel like I was being judged.
Right.
And so that's when, the darkest part of, I think the last couple of years before my inevitable rock bottom, and everybody has one of those. If you're an addict, you have a rock bottom. Some are just more severe than others. The last few years was really, really dark. But within those last few years, I had met some really, really cool people that would change my life for me, because I was too hot-headed to walk through the doors of AA again. I said, never works, doesn't work for me. So I got to find another way.
Right.
I remember it was before I jumped into one of my longer stretches of sobriety. I was sitting on my couch, and I think I was not doing well. I think I was pretty banged up from the night before, or just maybe I was still just on a bender. But I was sitting there watching Facebook, and this guy, his name's Mark, posted on his Facebook page saying, my name's Mark. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for this amount of time. And I just really, really want to get this out there that you're not alone, that you don't have to do this by yourself. And that if you ever need somebody to talk to, reach out to me. And his story was a lot longer than that, but I'll shorten it up for the sake of our time.
No, that's good.
And so I sat on my couch watching this video over and over and over again. And just like everything that he was saying was lining up with how I was feeling. So I reached out, and Mark and I met for coffee at a Tim Hortons one day. And he sat across from me, and he didn't have judgment in his eyes. He just had, relatability. Like, he's like, holy fuck, like you and I are the same person and doing the exact same things. And so I dove into sobriety with his help. He helped me stay accountable, and I continued to work on it. I ended up relapsing again, just out of sheer stupidity this time. Like, I don't know why I picked up the drink, but the reality of addiction is that it only takes one, and then it can spiral you into it. That my next 2 years of like every single day drinking. And I don't know how I was able to, I wasn't able to financially afford any of this, but like I went into crazy amounts of debt, but it was all in the reality of wanting to get screwed up and messed up. And finally, my last kick, my last little stint, it was right around this time. It was actually, I think my last big drink was on Valentine's Day. I had gone out, I was alone, I was tired. I surrounded myself with people that were going to, again, facilitate a really fun weekend. And we went and we got hammered. I couldn't afford rent. I couldn't afford groceries. I had no food in my fridge. I had, I think, $25 cash left, and like a laundry list of debt. And I sat at work that day, and I think it was February 17th. And I sat at work that day, and I looked at this $25, and I was just like, well, you can either go to the dollar store and fill your fridge with whatever to hopefully get you through to the next pay. And then 5 o'clock rolled around, and I left work, and then I went straight to the bar. And I used the rest of the money that I had in my wallet, in my life, to buy more booze. And I was just like, I woke up February 18th, and I was so sick and so depressed and just truly fed up with who I was as a person, that I called my mom, and I just was like, I'm sick and I need you to come out here and we need to talk. And she drove out that day, and I just sat with her and said, Mom, listen, like, I'm really struggling with alcohol. At that time, at least I had quit drugs, which is a huge win, but the alcohol was my biggest battle. And she said, I know, like, I knew, she knew, everybody knew. It's just like, it's not their fight. They couldn't have done anything to make me change. Right. They were amazing parents. I have amazing family members. My sisters are wonderful people.
Yeah.
It was just something that I had to do. And the only way that I was going to get out of addiction and alcoholism was to choose to make the change.
I've heard that before too, about the person has to really want it. It can't be forced. Because if you're not there, you're not going to follow through with it, I guess, is the concept. How did that feel?
Oh, dude, I was a disaster. It felt amazing. I think it felt like relief, and there was a sense of release.
I bet.
A weight off my shoulders where, I didn't need them to do anything to take my pain away or to change me. I just needed to know that they were still going to be there, even if I admitted everything that I had done, like that I was in a crazy amount of debt, which they helped me get out of, and that I was, struggling to find my way in life.
Right.
And so when my parents both looked at me and said, we got you, like, we love you, we care about you, we just want you to get through this. And I was able to take that in and feel those emotions and understand that if I can do the work, and that I would always have a support group with me. And I feel very, very grateful and very lucky to have that, because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't, and that do go through these things on their own. I think one of my messages is that they don't have to, that there's other people in the world that want to see them succeed, especially me. Like, I don't want any recovering alcoholic or addict to struggle to find their crew, their community, their people. It just takes time, and they have to do the work in order to relinquish all the trauma and let go of all the past experiences and past issues that they've had in their lives in order to become the person that they've always wanted to be. And with that, you will find that community. You'll find those people that inevitably come into your life and provide you with a sense of joy and purpose.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Evan.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I don't know. This is, great. I'm just like absorbing this in like a sponge here. Do you find, because I know you're just mentioning community, and it's one of the things I open up with. Sure, I see you participating very heavily, but do you find like you're into a lot of like endurance sports now? Like you're doing running, you're doing triathlons. It's something else that we, I guess, kind of overlap on there. But do you find that there's a certain level of like, in a weird way, if I may compare this, but like addictive tendencies, like endurance athletes, and maybe where you're at before, where now you've replaced the addiction in a way?
Yeah, man. I mean, my first 365 days, I jumped on a Wheelhouse Cycle Club spin bike, and I don't think I left that studio.
Awesome.
I found a positive reinforcement community of people talking about creating change and talking about their shit and talking about life that is hard and that we all have to go through. And I soaked up their energy, and I soaked up that community. And I found another one of my probably greatest best friends, sober buddies, Andrew, who became a spin instructor, runs marathons, tatted from head to toe, has a beautiful son now and wonderful family, and all these things that sobriety has provided, but also the work that he's done has provided. And, it's because of these communities that I was able to stay sober for those, first 365 days. And then lead into COVID. And I say this to people all the time, that I'm so grateful that I had a year under my belt when COVID happened, because liquor marts were open. There was free government money coming in, and all we had was time on our hands. And I know a lot of people that struggled through COVID with addiction and with supplementing the world's stress with alcohol and drugs. And so like, I was grateful to be sober for that, because I would have not done well. I probably wouldn't be here if that was the case. But to your point about endurance sports and where I'm at now with doing triathlon and running and communities, there's 100% a I don't know, it's a fit for a guy like me, where I can put my energy and thoughts onto things that are hard. And I told myself after getting sober that I would do hard things for the rest of my life. Cool. Because it's a model, and it speaks to me. It just allows me to feel like I am working towards something, even if I'm, just the average Joe that's going out and doing it. Right? Like, I don't want to be a professional. There's no part of me that wants that, but I do want to be able to go out and hit the road and hit the pavement and do these crazy things, because at the end, I don't want to have resentment at the end of my life when I'm inevitably meet my end,
Yeah. Oh, that's super relatable there. And actually, if I may jump back for a sec, the whole 2020 timing, I think that was a major scapegoat for a lot of people, including myself, during that time. That was basically what you could do. I have a home gym. I have, a whole setup here and stuff. And I think, people know me well, that was an incredibly difficult time just in general. So if you have something really heavier going on, kind of thing, I had lots of outlets, but it was like, what are you going to do tonight? Sat on the driveway. We had our whole street, I think, had wine together, because that was kind of like all you were doing. And it was weird how that was actually like promoted aloud versus like a proper healthy outlet in many ways, not to harp on decisions made, but pretty obvious. It wasn't totally about the whole health piece all in a nutshell, because between physical and mental health, managing through that time, I would definitely agree with you. For time that probably would have been extra tricky to manage had you not already had maybe a year under the belt, or for other folks that were maybe leading up to that as well. So just
there's
totally
more
sticks out for me. But
and there's more conversations that we could have around like the marketing aspect of alcohol and how socially accepted it is, and blah, 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 and so on. But I'm not here to preach that people shouldn't drink. I'm just here to talk about the reality of what alcohol and drugs can actually do to a person that generally had a great upbringing, a life on a trajectory, goals, things that he wanted to accomplish, but it changes you. It changes the way that you think. It changes the way that you act. It changes your decision making. And it took a lot of years for me to get back to a mental capacity of thinking about like how to develop friendships and how to have relationships without it. Like I've a ton of conversations around, like, I'm so glad that sobriety is booming now.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of podcasts and a lot of conversations around what alcohol does in the health world. And for me, it's exciting to see, because when I first started to get sober, anytime that I would go out and meet somebody and say, oh, I don't drink, I would be looked upon as like an outcast. And now I say I don't drink, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, people are starting to get it. It's okay to not. It's okay if you choose to do a month with sobriety, or if you choose to not drink ever again. Like, you are accepted for who you are and the decisions that you make. And I want you to feel confident in those choices, because sobriety is a wonderful life for me. And I know a lot of other people that have gone through sobriety and are living a sober life, and they love it. And it's amazing. And I don't think at 38 years old, I would have the same amount of energy that I do to promote to other things like triathlon, or like communities, or working 2 jobs, or trying to build my entrepreneur capital and things like that. Like, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today without it. So for me, it's the best decision of my life. It's changed me for exponentially. And I'm very excited about the next, 40, 50 years of life that I have, because I get to live it with clarity and with incredible decision-making and with the fun of remembering and living every moment and feeling every emotion without having to mask it with alcohol or drugs.
That's awesome. That's a great story, Evan. I love to hear that too. And I know that you are, or maybe, I don't know if you still are, but you were helping support kind of like a non-alcoholic beer option for a bit. Are you still involved with them?
Yeah. So I'm an ambassador with Athletic Brewing. It's a non-alcohol beer company out of the States. They are everywhere now, which is, I think they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, non-alcoholic beer company out there. They make incredible product. I'm very grateful to have done a triathlon with their tri team. They sponsor major events all across the globe. And they're about making change, and they want to continue to have that growth in the years to come, which I'm super excited about. And other companies like Sober Market here in Winnipeg, like Sober Market, locally owned and operated, which they are amazing. And I'm so grateful to have been able to meet them and to see, them really create change through our community by bringing in non-alcoholic options. Yeah,
no, I totally agree with you in terms of it's definitely more acceptable. It's now everywhere has options for it. And I've tried the Athletic Brew Co. beer. Actually, I've been by their location, oddly enough, with another client that I worked with for a bit down in San Diego. I don't know if they still are out of there, but there's one work park area. We're driving by and being like, oh yeah, I know that that logo. This is a few years ago now. That's great. And you are doing a lot in the running side of things too. Now I know that's kind of like an offshoot of some of the work that you do, but I feel like you're kind of helping organize like a bit of like the running scene in Winnipeg. But that's how I observe it anyways. I feel like you're kind of like the go-to guy there. But how would you describe your involvement in the running community here locally?
Yeah, locally, I mean, I have always wanted to be a leader within a community, and the running community has accepted me in such a beautiful way. We have such an incredible running community within Winnipeg. A very tight-knit group of amazing people that do incredible things. So for me, it's just, I show up within the community as myself, and I would love to continue to grow that community by just creating a safe space for people to come into, whether it's via a run club or races that we get to put on throughout the year or events and things like that. I'm involved with City Park Runners, which is a independent running shoe store here in Winnipeg. That's my part-time job. That's one of my fun jobs that I like to do. So you can find me there. And running's hard. Okay. Running is not an easy thing to do, but it is a very, very amazing commitment to yourself if you are able to get out there and try it. I always suggest to work yourself into an endurance sport like running, because it is hard and it is challenging, but it is exponentially, it pays off if you continue to do it. It's just a beautiful sport. So
awesome. What's your favorite part of the triathlon race?
Ooh, favorite part of the triathlon race. The start of the swim. We call it the washing machine. Yeah. Okay. It's where, I like to get out front as fast as I possibly can so I don't get swam over, but being at the Oceanside Ironman in April last year, you're swimming with thousands of people. It's one of the most exhilarating and challenging things. You're getting swam over top of and kicked and slapped, and it's just an amazing thing. It's an amazing sport, and that one's I think just feeds my addictive side of my personality, where I'm like, get me in there, get me that dopamine. Let me feel somebody beside me so that I can keep my energy levels up. And then jumping on the bike, like I love it. Just biking is such a freeing sport.
And then the running, also good.
Yeah, the running. I mean, the running comes last. Like it's challenging. Don't get me wrong. You have to. If you want to cross the finish line, you have to do the run, right? So I think the running part is what I love about the running part, and it's a testament to our running community here. When I'm doing a triathlon and you're running, everybody's in the same position that you are. They're all struggling, but the positivity that you get from that field of runners as people pass by you is unbelievable. They cheer you on. They pick you up when you're down. It's truly a team effort to get through a triathlon, even though it's an individual sport.
Very much so. No, I'd totally agree. And I love those parts too a bit. The swim for kind of similar reasons though, but it's like, that rush. And actually there was a podcast I just listened to reference. I was thinking about this as we were chatting, but you just mentioned the word dopamine specifically, but Diary of a CEO has this really great, have you listened to that one? About,
yeah. I don't know if I've listened to this specific episode, but I love Diary of the CEO.
Oh, okay. Well, after this, if I'll go back, I just listened to it recently. It was very relatable to help understand like the way that they described dopamine addiction or any kind of like addiction and access to items, whether it be drugs, alcohol, whatever it is that you're addicted to. And then just like, coming back to those hits and why it functions the way it does. Even hearing your story here, I'm like, oh man, like I'll mention this later. But I'll send it to you after the episode. It's go. I mean, I don't even know if you want to listen to it, but I liked it. It was interesting.
It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
That podcast is unbelievable. Yeah. It's taught me a lot, to be honest. I listen to him quite often. Every time that I have time to sit down and listen to a podcast, I throw his on because he asks amazing questions and he talks to amazing people. So
yeah, he does good work out there. Evan, outside of the podcast today, what's the best way for folks to follow your journey on social medias and such? What are the handles and the best way to get a hold of you?
I deal mostly in Instagram. My Instagram handle is at EvanJDTri, TRI. You could follow me there. If not, I'm at City Park Runners Sundays and Tuesdays. If you want to stop in and see me there, I am there. I do run clubs Thursday nights at City Park at 6 p.m. and Sunday mornings at City Park at 8 a.m. And then, of course, throughout more leaning into summer, I'll be at a lot more running events and never feel like you can't come up and say hi to me. I love connection. I love talking to people. I love meeting new people. And if you have a story that relates to, my journey, I love hearing about it because it literally fires me up inside. It makes me so happy that people can create change in their lives for the positive. So that's where you can find me. My full-time job. I'm also, if you need any men's fashion, I'm a fashion guy. So I work for an independent menswear store called Vittorio Rossi Clothiers, and you can find me there for the remainder of the week. I work 7 days a week, so always grinding.
Awesome. Love to hear it, Evan. Thanks so much for making time to be on today. That's everything from me here. If you had anything else you wanted to add in, wonderful. Love to hear it, but if not, then we're good here. And this was awesome to, I think, just starts really here, beginning of your story, really. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And, just a message to everybody out there is just be good to one another, love each other, and go do hard things.
Love it.